Hello, and welcome to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. I'm David. This episode's going to be a little shorter because, thank goodness, there were a lot more finishes and much better scoring. I feel as though the judges possibly got like a talking to and felt as though they needed to really be more precise on these scorecards. And a lot of these scorecards are straight, but I think that's mostly attributed to how the card went. But first, I want to talk about a couple house cleaning stuff. So is that the term, house cleaning? I want to get some stuff out first. Why the videos are late. I understand that the pay-per-views are on a Saturday, and I release these videos somewhere around a Tuesday or Wednesday. And the reason I do that is because I work during a Saturday, and I'm unable to watch the pay-per-view on a Saturday, and the latest, or the earliest actually, I can watch a pay-per-view is Tuesday. Sometimes maybe I can wake up early and maybe I have everything recorded and watch a couple fights and score them as I go. But I just wanted to make that clear. That way it doesn't seem as though I'm waiting and then making like a scorecard of any sort. Like I'm making a fake scorecard. I'm scoring these as I watch this. And I'm not re-watching it so I can get a better scorecard. I'm putting myself in the mind of a judge and watching it as though it's live. Again, with a better screen, because I assume the judges are cage side and I'm looking through the universal screen of how the UFC puts out the fights. That's the first order of business. Second order of business is I noticed that this card was the first scorecard. It was the first card for me that kind of tested not only my knowledge but how I score fights. And it just shows that, again, I understand that the series is called Injustice For All, and it's kind of like a cheeky way of shitting on the judges and maybe sometimes the refs, but in a way, again, each and every episode, I think what I'm learning is it's really hard to score some of these fights. It's really hard to just sit down and score some of these fights. And there's two fights I'll talk about where the cards come up, and individually there are some rounds where you can give them to certain people. You know, still, I'm still calling this Injustice For All because, you know, there are some decisions where you're just like, man, that person got robbed, obviously. But there are some fights where you could really give it to either person. And then there are some fights where, listen, that's a tie. No one outright won it. So I just wanted to clarify that point as, you know, another reason. Another thing I want to talk about is a lot during the broadcast, I have the benefit of looking at the stats because the stats will then be put up in front of me, right? The judges don't have that discretion. I don't take that into account when I'm using my scorecard. One, because they are unofficial scorecards, and two, because it's cheating in a way. Also, they're not accurate, hence why they're called unofficial scorecards. I believe there was a fight on this card. I believe it was DePaula versus Fry. There's a part where DePaula was on the ground for, I believe, 9+ minutes, and she had some. She was attacking from the bottom, not a lot, but a little bit. And when they showed the final the final strikes, they had 0 for her. The point I'm trying to make is that while it does benefit me and maybe the average fan of saying, hey, this person had a bunch of strikes, therefore they should have won this round, as a judge, you're judging the round individually and how it may be perceived. Another good example of that would be the Hack Perez versus Garcia fight. I mean, in the middle of that fight, they show the strikes, and it shows that Hack Perez is winning all 3 rounds on strikes. But if you look at the judge's scorecard and my scorecard, but we'll get to that, he loses the first round based off of just the placement of the shots and how cleanly they hit. So I just think that it's, I just want to make it clear that even though for me the stats are coming up, I'm not using that as barometer. Obviously, if a person's just breaking away, it's this wholly separate thing. But if it's a very even fight, it's not beneficial to use the stats as a reason why a person won that round. Another thing I wanted to make clear was I don't rewatch the fight afterwards, meaning I don't do the scorecard and then I don't make my scorecard and then go, oh, I'm unsure about this, let me rewatch the fight. Again, that's unfair. A judge doesn't have a rewind button to then go, I messed up here or whatever. I understand sometimes maybe scorecards come in late because, I don't know, they're tallying on the computer and the computer's probably slow or something, but I can't do that. That would be massively unfair. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, again, back to the judges. I'm being a bit more, nice about it because I think when fights have very little activity, it's easier to score these fights. But when both fighters are really going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I can see how some judges get a little cross-eyed and may go, huh, he won it. No, she won it. I can see how it gets there. So, obviously this is without saying, but more activity from both fighters means a harder scorecard. And again, I'm looking through a universal screen, and I have the benefit of looking at replays. A good example of that would be during the Jourdain Rojo fight. At the end of, I believe it was at the end of that second round. During the fight, it looks as though Jourdain lands a flying knee at the end. But if you look at the replay, he didn't really hit the knee, right? But you still gave Rojo that round because of all the stuff he did at the top part of that second round. But all the stuff that Jourdain did after the attempted flying knee was still valid because he pushed the pace and landed a bunch of strikes, even though the flying knee didn't hit. Hopefully all that jumble made some sense, but the first two things we want to go to are the injustices. Now, once again, this is called Injustice For All MMA. These are the scorecards where I believe were wrong. Now, these two injustices are split decisions. And both of these split decisions aren't split decision robberies, but they're very close to the point where I'm calling it an injustice, but it's not because it's so close, but I'm going to try and make my case. And for the first one, it's going to be Kape versus Aldridge. My scorecard reads 10-9 for Kape. in the first round, a 10-9 for Aldrich in the second, and a 10-9 for Casey in the third. Now, if you look at the judges' scorecards, Mike Bell had it a 10-9 for Casey. Mike Bell had it a 29-28 for Aldrich. Saul D'Amato had it 29-28 Aldrich. And Rick Winter had it 29-28 Casey. So my scorecard reflects Rick Winter. And the part, obviously, we all disagree on is the third round where two judges had it for Aldrich. And we assume that defense would be, obviously, they really valued that takedown towards the end of that third round, even though Casey gets up really, really quickly in that third round. But in that third round, it's obvious that she lands more strikes in that round. And even though she was taken down, she gets back up immediately. This round was super close. Really, really close. But just enough to where I thought Casey had won that round and won the fight. Again, I don't want to call it a massive injustice because it's just not. It just wouldn't be fair when they were both just going back and forth. One combination, another combination, and then Aldrich lands the takedown. So I can see how they gave her the round going. She mixed it up. But for me, I felt as though Casey landed the cleaner shots and won that round. For the second injustice, this one might help a little more. But again, I can see how the judges went somewhere with this, but I just don't agree. This one was Kape versus Nicolau. My scorecard is 29-28 Kape. My scorecard reads 10-9 in the first round for Nicolau, and then 10-9 for both Kape in the second and the third. This was also a split decision, and I'll read the judges' scorecards. Right, so Dave Hagen had it 29-28 Kape. And then Chris Lee and Brian Minner had it 29-28 for Nicolau. Now, this third round is where first is pretty obvious, second is pretty obvious for everyone. The third round is where we get into the sort of perception of how you want to look at it, because in that third round, it's back and forth. It's really back and forth. But it's where you put your weight on what it's where you value the strikes more, because initially in the round, Nicolau is doing well. Nicolau's getting him. He was getting him for the first half. And then it gets really back and forth-ish. And then in the final round, he finishes. Kape finishes really, really well. So it just goes to where did Nicolau do enough in that first part to where he deserves the round? I don't think so. And one of the judges, Dave Hagen, also agrees with me that I don't think Nicolau did enough to win that third round. But again, that's why it's a split decision. I believe two judges valued that first half of the third round action more than the last judge who valued that last half. This is another injustice for me. But again, it's not that much of an injustice because it's a split decision and it's very, very close. And now we're going to move on to the honorable mentions. As you know, the honorable mentions are just, the right fighter won, but, there was something that stuck out, but most importantly, an individual round, to me, was scored just terribly, just really bad, and I tried to make the case for that. And we go to, I think we only have one honorable mention. Yes, I believe we only have one honorable mention. And that should be Haqparast versus Garcia. And this fight was great, but to the scorecards we go. My scorecard was 29-28 Haqparast. Obviously, everyone had it that way. Except for Chris Lee, who had it 30-27. Camijo had it 29-28 for Haqparast, and Tony Weeks had it 29-28 for Haqparast. But Chris Lee gave Haqparast the first round. Now, I can probably understand why he gave him the first round. He was mixing it up a lot in that first round, probably more than Garcia was. But Garcia was landing the much better shots. I mean, much better shots, to the point where they were landing. And I don't want to say it rocked him, but they were much cleaner. Much cleaner, to where it was obviously his round. And two judges saw it that way, except for Chris Lee. And he was pushing the pace. He was absolutely pushing the pace. That I think is an injustice in that first round by Chris Lee, who gives Haqparast the very first round. I don't think it's the 30-27. Even though in those latter two rounds, not only does he turn it up, but he continues to mix it up like he does in the first, but he's hitting. This time it's more accurate than what Garcia is hitting, and obviously he wins the round. That's it for the entire card. This very few things in this round. I mean, we were close to getting a possible 10-8 in the Jourdain versus Rojo fight, if that doesn't continue, if he doesn't TKO him in the end. But other than that, all the other scorecards were pretty close. All the other scorecards were really correct, and a fight either ended in a no contest or somebody got finished. So that should be it. Hopefully the next episode I do gets out a little sooner, and we just keep going. Thank you, and best of luck.